Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Across the Ocean, the show on YouTube for lovers of underwater image making. My name's James in Miami.
And this is Matthias straight from Zurich.
And in this episode, we're going to be sharing with you our favorite hacks for underwater camera operators. Matthias, buddy, how you doing? Great to see you as always.
Thank you. Yes, James, I'm doing fantastic. It's been so much happening lately, and I'm really doing well. I'm looking forward to the summer that is just sort of on the doorstep. I can't wait for warmer weather, warmer water, also here in Switzerland, and just more time in the water, really. What about you? How has your last month been? What have you been up to?
Super busy with students, just back-to-back teaching. It's been fantastic, good range of courses, some technical diving, some recreational diving. And you know the water's always warm here in Florida, mate, so anytime you want to come over for some warm water, we're ready to receive you.
Jesus, I know we've talked about this for a very long time, and I do think rather earlier than later we need to make this happen finally.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It's just been too long that we haven't actually been in the water together, and it's definitely time that we get to have our very first maiden dive together.
I'm excited for it. I can't wait. I know exactly where we're going to go. You know where I'm going to take you for sure. So
excellent. But before we get too excited about the possibility of diving together, let's talk about today's topic and what we're going to discuss. You mentioned underwater camera hacks. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So I got 3 hacks that I've thought of that are just hints and tips, and maybe some of the people watching this already know them. Maybe this is going to be new to you, particularly if you're just setting up your first camera housing. These are just simple hacks that are work process things that make my life easier when I'm filming underwater. So they're not things you have to do, they're not really safety related, they're more just about convenience and comfort and making, like I said, making your life as easy as possible. So just simple tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way, some of which I've stolen from you and watching your videos on your channel, Matthias, and that's what it is, because that's what friends do. They steal ideas from each other. That's what it's all about. So my first hack is a very simple one, and that is a good old-fashioned double ender. So I always, when I dive tech or recreational, I always have what I call my utility double-ended bolt snap on my chest D-ring of my BCD. So I always have that, whether I'm filming or not, or teaching or whatever. I just always have one of these, because if I have a reel come loose or something breaks or whatever, it's just a super useful tool to fix a hell of a lot of problems. So my utility double ender that just sits there and is always ready to go. But when I'm filming, this has a specific purpose, and that purpose is my dome cover. So that just snaps onto there. I can snap that off onto my D-ring, or sometimes I even move it down to my hip because I don't want it floating up in my face. Sometimes I'll just clip it off onto my tailbone or a different D-ring, but just making sure that that is secured. I've seen other people slip their wrist through it and put it through there. I don't like that because it's bulky and maybe it covers up my compass or my computers and so on. So I always just clip it off on a double ender and then clip it off onto a D-ring out of the way, and that way it's secure. You're not going to lose it. I don't like the idea of shoving it into a pocket because this is positively buoyant, so it means it can float away if it comes loose. So I just know that it's there, and then as I'm getting ready to pass my camera back up to the boat, it's real easy to recover it, put it back on in the water, and hand up my camera with the dome port protected. So that's my first hack.
I like it. Cool.
You like that one? So my second hack is always, if I'm diving with a camera, I'm diving with 2 computers, a primary and a backup. Now, it doesn't have to be the flashiest computer out there. You don't need to double down on the same as your primary computer, whatever that may be. But I always like to have a very simple dive computer mounted on one of the float arms of my camera. And the reason that I do this is because then my dive information is in my line of sight as I'm holding the camera out in front of me. If I'm holding the camera like this, I can't see my primary computer. It's on the back side of my wrist from my point of view. So if I've got a computer facing me, I'm getting all my dive information in my line of sight. And if there's a alert or any kind of flashing or vibration, I can see it, I can feel it, and it's right there in my line of sight. So that's very important for me, because one of the biggest hazards of filming underwater is getting distracted by what you're doing and not paying attention to your dive profile. So it doesn't really matter which one you designate as a primary and which one as a secondary. Normally I keep my primary to be the one on my wrist, because I know that's at the same height as my body, so it more accurately tracks my physiology, whereas my camera arms may be a foot or two shallower than my body actually is. But just that you've got something in your line of sight that you can see. So I have a very simple Aqualung i200C, I think it's their base model computer, and I just have it on the most conservative setting, and I mount that onto my float arm, and it's right there in my line of sight. So that's my second hack.
One thing that is very beneficial in having a computer on your camera rig, because I do that also, I find that absolutely compulsory to have a computer on your camera rig. Because it happened to me a couple times that I have entered the water and I have forgotten, especially after a surface interval, to put my computer back onto my wrist after dressing up again. And if I go in there, finally, I'll never forget my camera, but I'll forget my computer. And if I have my camera with me, I automatically also have my computer with me. So that's another good reason why having a computer on your camera rig is really, really useful.
Yeah, and particularly just, especially if you go on a liveaboard and one of your computers dies, you've still got an accurate record of the dives that you've done, and you can carry on diving, as opposed to being forced to take a 12 or 24 hour, break from diving and filming when you're on a liveaboard paying, thousands of dollars for a luxury trip, and they won't let you dive because your computer's dead. That's suboptimal. So just for that reason as well, 2 computers is better than 1. And then my last hack, and this is again something that's pretty obvious, but something that I've learned the hard way many, many times, is actually just to have a backup camera. Right? Now, that doesn't mean 2 of the same huge big, Nauticam fitted out with like the arms and everything. I just mean literally a second camera mounted onto my main rig, and that's normally a GoPro or a DJI Osmo. In your case, I know you're a big fan of those, but just something simple and action camera that you can just hit record if action is happening faster. And you'll be surprised, like when we did the sardine run last year and we put that film together, some of that footage that was coming at us so fast actually came off the GoPro and not the GH5, just because I had that running the whole time and it was faster than me hitting the trigger. Plus, if you mess up, if you forget to take the lens cap off of your lens, that's happened to me. If your battery dies on your main camera, at least you're getting in the water and you've got something that you can film and record. So if you're gonna spend, thousands of dollars on a camera and a rig and lighting and arms and all that stuff, what's a couple of $100 extra to put a GoPro on the top of it?
Yeah, totally agree, yeah.
So those are my 3 hacks: double ender, second computer, backup camera. Pretty much straightforward. How about you, Matthias?
Straightforward. Let me just ask you one thing about your last point, the extra camera.
Shoot.
How do you set that camera? Is it set to the same sort of frame rate settings as your main camera, or do you use it in a different setting?
Yeah, generally yes. I mean, if it's just a GoPro, obviously you don't have the full flexibility of aperture and manual white balance that I've got on my big boy primary camera. But yes, I'll definitely do frame rate, and resolution will be the same. So usually underwater I'm shooting 4K 60, which the GoPro does very comfortably.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll have those things the same, and then I will try and do I think the white balance increments are in 100 Kelvin or 200 Kelvin for
something
GoPro.
like that,
I can't remember. It's something like that, increments. So I'll just try and get it as close to my lights as possible, so that it's it's set as close as possible. But obviously they're not as specific with the controls as like I said, a big boy camera.
Sure. Okay. One thing, I also do the same thing. I also have a little GoPro or a Osmo Action clipped onto my main rig. I oftentimes use it though as I call it a slow motion camera. So I have it, especially with the GoPro Hero 10, which records up to 120 frames in 4K. I normally keep it on that setting, and then I've got my main camera, which records either in 24 or in 60 frames per second. And if any fast action, I can imagine like during the sardine run, as you were mentioning before, happens, you then have some coverage in sort of a slow motion footage as well, if you want to slow something down a little more than what you can do with the 60 frames per second on our GH5 rig. So that's just something else that I would consider there, but yeah, very good hack, something that I think most semi-professionals or professionals do underwater, have a second camera clipped onto their main rig. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. How about you? What are your hacks?
Well, I've got also 3 hacks that I've picked out that are slightly different to what you mentioned. The first one is that I always, when I go someplace, I always bring a little luggage scale with me. And this is not because I always travel too heavy and I need to make sure that I don't overload the aircraft, but it's really something that I use to weight my specific setup that I'm using in a situation or for a certain dive in the body of water that I'm diving in, because it depends a lot whether I'm diving here in the Lake of Zurich or in the Red Sea. The buoyancy is going to be very different just because of the salinity of the water. So I'm making sure that every time I go to a new destination, I check how much negative buoyancy my entire rig has, and then I can compensate with adding some floats onto my rig, trying to get it to as close to perfect when it comes to neutral buoyancy as I possibly can. So having that scale with you, it's not expensive and it's not gonna be take up a lot of space in your luggage, but it's definitely gonna help you achieve that perfect neutral buoyancy on your camera rig without having to fiddle around for a couple of dives before you even get to start enjoying taking clips underwater.
That's a good one. All right, what's your second hack?
Okay, the second one, for me, a very basic one. Always have a white or gray slate with you when filming underwater. Obviously only if your camera is capable of performing a manual white balance. If it is capable of doing that, I've said this many times also on pretty much every single video on my channel, whenever possible use manual white balance when filming underwater, and your camera can do this. The colors are just gonna come out much nicer. You're gonna be much more happy with your results than relying on auto white balance or any of the other presets that the cameras come with. So I always have a white slate with me, and I use that to correct my white balance every couple meters I descend or ascend during the dive. So that's my second hack there. Hack number 3 is to use, again, this is if your camera permits this, to use your custom presets on the camera to actually set presets in those setups, so that you can quickly switch in between, for example, your wide angle setup or wide angle settings, your macro settings. Maybe you also have a slow motion setting that you want to use, and you don't have to change your aperture, your white balance, your frame rate manually, because depending on the camera, the GH5s are not too bad. You can do that fairly quickly. But I'm not a big fan of the Sony menu system. If you have to change all these things on a Sony camera, we're probably gonna run out of air before you even get to have everything changed to where you want to have it. So using that option of setting presets and being able to quickly change in between those presets while underwater, that's gonna make a big difference when, you know, you're filming your little seahorse and then you suddenly see your mermaid chased by a dolphin behind you. If you can just turn the knob and you're on your slow motion wide angle setup right away, you might be able to grab a shot. Otherwise, it's just going to be pretty much impossible.
Yeah, that's ideal. I absolutely do that all the time. Even in the studio here, I have C1 set to anything that's me talking, and then I have C2 set to 60 frames per second when I'm shooting like product B-roll, and the same for my underwater camera, you know, just for different scenes. So it's so easy. It's just one twist of the knob and hey presto, you know, you're switching between your different setups. So it takes a little time, obviously, to set those things up and program them, but once you've got them, you're sweet. And also I learned as well that using the memory card, you can copy them from one camera to the other. So when I got a second GH5, I just copied my presets over, and then all of a sudden C1, C2, C3 are exactly how I wanted them to be. So it's kind of like you do that job once and you're golden. So definitely a top hack.
Yeah, and the good idea is also, you mentioned you can have it on the SD card. If you do copy that on the SD card, copy those presets, that little file that gets put on your SD card, copy that onto your computer somewhere and keep it in a safe place. Because if you screw up with your setups or settings, or you have a malfunction of your camera, whatever, you can just retrieve the settings from that file that you've saved, and you don't have to go through everything again. It just makes your life so much easier if you do that.
That's awesome. I'm actually going to do that now you've said that, as soon as we finish recording this.
Excellent. I'm glad
that's a top tip. I haven't done that. I don't have that. That's
something to you as well. Fantastic.
That's gold, man. See, we make these shows and I learn from Matthias. That's how this relationship works. Is like, we record these shows so that I can figure out, how to use all this camera stuff. That's
it's a two-way
basically
role,
what's
man.
going on
I
here.
learn from you as well. It's not just one way. Trust me.
I like it. That's what it's all about. Awesome, mate. Well, there we go. I mean, I think that wraps it. That's pretty much fantastic. That is 6 camera hacks for you in 15 minutes? We try and provide as much value as we can on this show. What are we going to talk about in the next episode, Matthias?
Well, in the next episode, we're talking about reasons for upgrading your camera system. Because a little bird told me that you were thinking about upgrading that nice big camera rig that is sitting behind you on the desk there. So I want to know more about that, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Sounds good. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for joining us here at Across the Ocean. We really appreciate all the comments and interaction, so let us know in the comments below what are your favorite underwater camera hacks that we missed. And we will see you in the next episode next month, which will be on the Matthias Labo channel. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to both our channels. Links in the description of this video below. Until next time, take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Matthias?
It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye!